Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take these really complex narratives and distill them into actionable, unforgettable insights for you.
And today, we are absolutely strapping in.
We are. It's a high-velocity journey that, well, it connects the mainframe to the mango grove, the blockchain to the bullock cart. We are talking about the extraordinary political career and, frankly, the gargantuan vision of one of India's most enduring and controversial figures.
Nara Chandrababu Naidu.
The man often dubbed the CEO of Andhra Pradesh.
And you know, that nickname, the CEO, it's not just some piece of political rhetoric. It's really a statement of his governing philosophy.
Explain that.
Well, our sources, they consistently paint Naidu as a genuine systems architect of governance. He's someone who sees a state less as, a territory defined by history and more as an enterprise.
An enterprise.
An enterprise defined by performance indicators, process flows, and future potential. This deep dive is essentially an exploration of how one man tried to code destiny into public policy.
And what happens when the logic of that algorithm meets the incredible messiness of democracy?
Exactly.
So our mission today is complex, but I think it's incredibly rewarding for anyone trying to understand modern governance, large-scale futurism in the 21st century. We're going to follow a distinct three-act structure.
Right.
First, we'll unpack the sources that chronicle his spectacular rise.
Yeah.
From a regional strongman to this global technocrat in the 1990s.
The first iteration of Naidu.
Then second, we're going to analyze the spectacular, humbling fall he experienced in 2019 and the hard-won lessons he seems to have extracted from that defeat.
A crucial part of the story.
And finally, we dive deep into the incredibly ambitious blueprints he is now leading for India's future. We're talking about the state-level Swarna Andhra at 2047 and its connection to the national Viksit Bharat 2047.
And what's truly fascinating here, and what our sources really hammer home, is that Naidu's entire career, from his early days to his current role as a national kingmaker, it's a kind of living parable from modern India's greatest challenge.
Which is?
It's the attempt to compress several generations of development. I mean, you're talking about the societal leap from agrarian simplicity to advanced digital infrastructure.
Right.
And doing it in a single 50-year plan. He calls it leapfrogging.
So it's an explicit exercise in viewing governance as a grand engineering project.
Precisely. Complete with comprehensive blueprints, high-stakes KPIs, and this constant administrative recalibration. He's this rare figure who successfully blends relentless technical execution with the necessary political ambition.
That is a critical distinction,
Yeah.
the merging of engineering and politics. Our source material notes that his vision is fundamentally about trying to code destiny into public policy.
I love that phrase.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
So what stands out to me right away and what we need to unpack first is this. How did a politician born in 1950, steeped in the agrarian heartland of Chittor district in Rayalaseema, how did he become known for speaking more fluently in PowerPoints than in traditional populist poetry?
That's the question, isn't it?
We need to trace this foundational shift that defined the first act of his technocratic reign.
Well, to understand the CEO, you first have to understand the red soil he came from. And, more importantly, the dramatic, almost brutal political pivot he executed.
The shift wasn't ideological in the way we usually think about it, was it?
No, not at all. It was administrative and fundamentally technological.
Okay, so let's start there. 1.1. The rise from red soil. This is the beginning of the story. Born in 1950, agricultural area. He starts his political life in the 1970s, but not with the party he's known for now.
No, he's with the Indian National Congress, and he rises incredibly fast through the ministerial ranks. I mean, our sources show he proved very early on that he had this sharp political acumen, real administrative capability.
He went from a youth leader to a cabinet minister by age 28.
28. Just think about that. This rapid ascent showed an inherent talent for, power negotiation and, crucially, for controlling the state machinery. He understood the levers of power from the inside.
But the real history-making moment, the pivot as you called it, that came 2 decades later in 1995.
And this wasn't some slow transition of ideology. It was a sudden, seismic shock to the political establishment that fundamentally reset his image and his trajectory.
The sources describe this pivot with, incredible dramatic flair. They call it a political coup straight out of Shakespeare.
It's an apt description.
This was the daring internal revolt against his own father-in-law, the legendary actor turned politician N.T. Rama Rao, NTR.
Who was the founder of the Telugu Desam Party, the TDP. And NTR wasn't just a politician. He was, to many people, a deity-like figure in the state. So this challenge was, it was inherently sacrilegious in political terms.
The sheer scale of the betrayal and the subsequent power consolidation, it was done with the swiftness and precision of a surgical strike.
That's why it earned that dramatic Shakespearean description. It completely broke the tradition of political filial piety. I mean, this was a defining moment, not just for him personally, but really for Indian politics.
How so?
It demonstrated that loyalty, even family loyalty, could be discarded for a higher goal.
And this is the crucial nuance that I think often gets lost. Our sources explicitly state that this was filial loyalty sacrificed at the altar of perceived inefficiency.
That phrase right there, perceived inefficiency, that is the absolute key.
It's the key to understanding his entire governing philosophy and his justification for the revolt.
Yeah.
He wasn't just hungry for raw power. He was presenting himself as necessary for fundamental reform.
For performance metrics. He was creating this powerful narrative that the traditional way of doing politics, even under a beloved icon like NTR, was just no longer sufficient for the needs of a modernizing post-liberalization economy.
So let's unpack that inefficiency claim a bit more, because it really is the philosophical marker of his whole reign.
It is. The critique Naidu leveled against the previous government wasn't about, say, corruption or ideology in the classic sense. It was about stagnation. He argued that the state was being run with a lack of professionalism, that decisions were slow, bureaucratic, and they lacked alignment with this new global economy that was emerging.
He was essentially saying, we are managing poverty when we should be engineering wealth.
Exactly. He framed the entire political crisis as a choice between populist stasis and technocratic acceleration, and he won that argument.
And the moment he assumed power as chief minister of what was then united Andhra Pradesh, he initiated 1.2, a new vocabulary of leadership.
It was immediate and it was profound, a complete shift to corporate metrics. He just stopped speaking in the traditional emotive political language of his predecessors.
The language that's usually focused on, historical grievances or big generalized freebies.
Gone. Instead, he introduced this radically different lexicon that sounded more like a board meeting than a cabinet meeting. We're talking performance indicators, performance budgets, real-time data analysis, global investor roadshows.
And those highly visible e-governance dashboards.
I mean, this kind of leadership language was absolutely unheard of for a regional politician in India in the mid-1990s. He was establishing a new, data-driven relationship with the state machinery itself.
It was a massive philosophical contrast. While his contemporaries across the country were focused on maximizing subsidies, the traditional populist approach aimed at immediate electoral gratification.
Naidu was prioritizing server farms over subsidies. He was deliberately moving away from what he saw as inefficient traditional populist politics. He was building a new political identity around efficiency, speed, technology, and global connectivity.
He was gambling. He was gambling that competence would translate into votes better than compassion.
A gamble that, as we'll see, would later prove to be both genius and deeply flawed.
And this philosophical shift, it directly manifested in his most recognized achievement of that era. 1.3, Cyberabad, when Silicon met Sanskrit, the tech renaissance.
This was not just a physical construction project. It wasn't about building a few office towers. It was an ideological statement.
A statement that government could and should actively drive technological transformation at a really accelerated pace.
It was his masterpiece, the project that permanently branded him as the CEO. The vision was massive. Transform Hyderabad into Asia's rising tech capital. He wanted to compete directly with global centers.
And he quite literally rechristened its future identity as Cyberabad.
That name, that imagery speaks volumes about his ambition. He wanted to build a futuristic metropolis out of ancient, hard Deccan basalt, merging the state's heritage with a digital destiny. He used the name Cyberabad to create a mental brand, one that could be recognized internationally long before any real infrastructure was even built.
But vision requires execution, right? And that meant aggressive, highly personal courting of global giants.
And the sources highlight the single most important act here. It was his focused, relentless effort in persuading Microsoft to establish its first development center outside the U.S. in Hyderabad in 1998.
This wasn't just a passive investment. He didn't just send a letter.
No, not at all. Naidu personally oversaw every single detail. He guaranteed speed, he guaranteed access, he bypassed the notorious red tape associated with Indian bureaucracy. He basically told them, tell me what you need, it will be done.
And that move, according to the sources, it sent seismic signals through India's entire IT ecosystem, Why was it so significant?
Because it was a stamp of global validation that shifted the balance of power. It proved to international investors that a state government in India, through sheer political will and focused technocratic policy, could successfully compete on a global scale.
Compete for high-value, cutting-edge investment.
Exactly. He was directly challenging established centers like Bangalore and Pune. It was a massive confidence booster for the state and, you could argue, for India's entire IT ambition at the time.
And that one success created a massive snowball effect.
A huge one. Microsoft's presence immediately turned high-tech city into the crucible of this vision. It attracted a who's who of global tech giants. IBM, Oracle, Google, Deloitte, they all came.
Those were the marquee names. Their presence cemented Hyderabad's status. And eventually, it made it one of the major, stable pillars of India's overall IT strength.
And created hundreds of thousands of high-value jobs in the process.
But the sources make it clear it wasn't just about attracting foreign companies to build shiny offices. He fundamentally challenged the local bureaucracy with technology, too.
Yes, aiming for internal, citizen-facing efficiency. He pioneered e-governance with a system called e-Seva.
Which means electronic service. It's now known as ME-Seva.
And it digitized essential government services. Everything from paying your utility bills to getting birth certificates, long before the concept of digital India entered the national lexicon.
This was a critical internal disruption.
It was a direct technological challenge to traditional corruption and red tape. It removed the need for citizens to physically go and interact with multiple bureaucratic levels, stand in lines.
All the things that make dealing with government so frustrating.
Right. It streamlined the interface between the citizen and the state. It transformed governance from a maze of files into a dashboard of services, and that significantly reduced the transaction costs of daily life.
He was treating the state like a massive, complex business process that needed continuous optimizing and debugging.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And the ultimate symbolic act, the thing that confirmed his status as the Technocrat king, came in 1999.
1.4. The symbolic act of a new age, the 1999 presentation. This is such a powerful visual anecdote that just encapsulates his entire brand.
This is when Naidu presented Andhra Pradesh's IT blueprint to U.S. President Bill Clinton.
One of the most powerful people in the world at the time. And he did it using a simple modern tool, a laptop, and a PowerPoint presentation.
Our sources emphasize this was a first for an Indian leader in such a high-level diplomatic setting. It wasn't just a casual briefing, it was a deliberate, calculated performance.
It was. It signaled globally that this Indian chief minister was speaking the functional language of Silicon Valley. He was prioritizing clarity and data visualization over traditional political grandstanding. He was actively changing the international perception of Indian political leadership.
Moving it away from being seen as inward-looking and socialist-minded.
To globally competent and digitally fluent.
And the result was undeniable proof of concept for his whole thesis that technology leads to growth.
By 2004, Andhra Pradesh recorded annual growth exceeding 9%. This showed that the technocratic approach wasn't just theoretical or symbolic, it was a genuine economic success story.
It delivered tangible results. It fueled one of the fastest-growing regions in the country.
And this economic proof was his political defense for that controversial pivot he made back in 1995.
So if we look back at this whole era, the synthesis of this success is that it established Naidu as the cyber sannyasi, a monk of metrics.
A great term. He wasn't just using technology, he was actively governing as technology made flesh. He integrated real-time decision dashboards into his daily routines. He was constantly monitoring performance analytics, public grievances, project deadlines.
Long before this became a popular trend in global governance.
Decades before. This pioneering approach, this obsession with metrics and IT infrastructure, it laid the undeniable groundwork for India's later national focus on digitalization. He demonstrated that scale and speed were possible within a democratic framework.
He set a high benchmark for what was achievable when political will aligned with sophisticated technological architecture.
He showed that you could rapidly move a regional economy by thinking globally and digitally. But, and here's the critical pivot point in the narrative, success at this velocity can blind you.
Blind you to the slower-moving forces just beneath the surface.
Precisely.
That's a fascinating insight. He transformed the relationship between the governed and the government, but did he transform the relationship between the ruler and the ruled?
That is the question.
I mean, farmers started meeting him holding smartphones, bureaucrats briefed him with data visualization instead of files, and ministers answered to performance analytics. He was demanding data-driven outcomes from a system built on, well, slow bureaucratic inertia.
But demanding metrics from ministers is one thing.
Understanding the emotional metrics of the electorate is quite another.
And that's exactly where the trouble started. His success wasn't universally loved. And this leads us directly to the humbling, challenging second act of his political life. The very success of the Technocrat created the political conditions for his eventual failure.
Naidu's story is so powerful because it includes this profound political and personal failure, a necessary correction maybe, that forced a really painful learning experience.
It is the classic high-flyer trajectory.
He achieved incredible heights, but failed to ground that achievement in the wider electorate.
And here's where the narrative shifts, and we see the political danger of that CEO mindset. We enter 2.1, the Icarus paradox of modernization.
That's a powerful metaphor from the sources, Icarus flying too close to the sun.
And the flaw, according to this metaphor, wasn't the vision itself. It was the resulting political blindness. The hyper-focus on urban modernization, specifically the shining success of Cyberabad, which tragically alienated the rural and agrarian core of the state.
So was the blame solely on this hyper-focus, or was there an element of, say, hubris? Or maybe even deep-seated corruption masked by the shine of the tech focus?
The sources suggest it was primarily a failure of distribution and focus. The political critique wasn't that Cyberabad was bad. It was that the benefits didn't trickle down fast enough or tangibly enough to the vast rural populations that still depended on agriculture.
It's that perennial, almost existential challenge of rapid economic development in a nation like India, isn't it? The urban-rural disconnect.
It is. So while the GDP charts were soaring, the common issues on the ground were being neglected.
And the specific issues cited were crucial. They directly contradicted his image of administrative efficiency. We're talking pervasive farm distress caused by liberalization and market changes,
Widespread drought in the dry regions.
chronic irrigation neglect, particularly the failure to complete major water projects.
And a perception of uneven welfare delivery. While the tech corridors were glowing and attracting all this global praise, vast stretches of the agricultural sector felt completely abandoned by the state government. They were feeling the pain of development without reaping any of the rewards.
And this provided a perfect, fertile platform for political weaponization.
A perfect platform. The sources clearly state that this narrative that Naidu prioritized skylines over sowing lines was perfectly framed and effectively used by Jagat Mohan Reddy's powerful populist movement.
The counter-narrative was that the state was being run for the benefit of the global elite and the urban classes, not the common person.
And that tribal drumbeat of democracy, which Naidu had initially tried to silence or outpace with his technocratic metrics, it came back with a vengeance to haunt him in 2004.
He lost that election despite a high growth rate.
Which demonstrates the absolute limits of pure technocracy without corresponding social empathy.
His comeback was built on learning this lesson, but his next attempt at a signature architectural statement, this was post-2014 state bifurcation, it suffered a similar fate.
Yes. 2.2, the Amaravati Mirage, the political Taj Mahal. This was Naidu's attempt to build an entirely new capital from scratch after Andhra Pradesh lost Hyderabad to the newly formed state of Telangana.
It was a necessary project. You have to build a capital, but the scale of it was just breathtaking.
This was the grandest of grand visions, the ultimate expression of his technocratic faith. Amaravati was designed by global maestros like Foster Plus Partners.
It was envisioned as Naidu's Sistine Chapel and his ideological blueprint in concrete and glass.
It was planned as an eco-smart urban utopia, complete with AI governance grids, sensor-based resource management, and climate-resilient infrastructure. It was truly meant to be a global example of the city of the future.
And critically, the sources detail the complex land acquisition process. This was something he was particularly proud of.
It was described as the world's largest consensual urban land reform, and it was achieved through land pooling from over 30,000 farmers across 29 villages.
That in itself is an administrative marvel. How do you convince 30,000 farmers to voluntarily pool their land in exchange for developed plots and annuity payments?
It highlights his unparalleled capacity for massive consensual administrative coordination. But its sheer scale and the reliance on farmer goodwill meant it was inherently politically vulnerable to change.
And despite the architectural and administrative ambition, the perception problem just persisted, and it ultimately overshadowed the vision leading into the 2019 elections.
By 2019, the partially completed project was widely viewed not as a futuristic vision, but as a futuristic mirage prioritizing skylines over sowing lines. Again, there was a growing perception of grandiosity, of misplaced priorities, pouring billions into a new capital while rural debts were mounting. And this contributed heavily, perhaps decisively, to his second political collapse.
A political collapse which culminated in 2.3, the historic collapse, 2019.
The sources underscore the shocking scale of this defeat. I mean, Naidu's party suffered a near political extinction. They won only 23 seats out of 175.
It was a devastating, comprehensive rejection of his government's direction and an affirmation of that populist counter-narrative.
It was.
But the most essential part of this entire sequence is the aftermath, the required self-reflection and learning. Our sources refer to Naidu's own confession in the years that followed.
He admitted that his obsession with pure performance metrics and the pursuit of international praise had inadvertently distanced him from the fundamental pulse of the rural electorate.
That is an unusual demonstration of humility in a veteran leader, especially one who governs with such a strong focus on engineering outcomes.
He realized that effective governance is not just an algorithm, it also requires empathy. It requires the traditional political art of listening to the ground, what you might call the political API that connects the technocrat to the citizen.
The data on his dashboard was telling him one story, while the electorate's experience was telling a different one.
And that profound failure, however, was the political fire that forged his most recent spectacular comeback.
Indeed. 2.4. The Phoenix Rises, 2024. Politics loves a good resurrection story, but this was more than just a win. It was a political earthquake that proved the value of his self-correction.
He returned spectacularly in 2024, leading the TDP-led alliance to sweep 164 seats, a landslide victory that completely unseated the government that had defeated him just 5 years earlier.
And he returned not just as a wounded veteran, but as a recalibrated strategist.
The political pitch shifted significantly. It demonstrated that he had internalized the lessons of 2004 and 2019. It evolved from simply aiming for a smart state
to striving for a smart and just state.
His new emphasis was on technology with tenderness, innovation with inclusion, growth with grounding. This acknowledged the fundamental need for both high growth and social equity, ensuring the systems he builds have social safety nets baked into the architecture from the start.
And at 75, he didn't just reclaim his chief minister's seat. He returned in a pivotal national role.
As a crucial ally within the NDA coalition, he's effectively positioned himself as a national kingmaker. His regional strength now translates into significant leverage in the national power structure,
which gives him a seat at the table for national long-term planning, like the Viksit Bharat agenda.
And, inevitably, the symbolic centerpiece of his original ambition, the revival of Amaravati, is now underway with renewed ferocity.
The city project, which had been stalled under the previous regime's 3 capital proposal, has been revised.
It now stands poised to be a global benchmark in sustainable urban design. It's a direct statement that the vision of futuristic governance is back on track, but this time filtered through a more sophisticated and wider social lens.
This arc of failure and learning is so critical because it sets the entire foundation for his current, almost sci-fi level long-term planning. He's taking that hard-won humility and combining it with his relentless technocratic ambition. So what does this all mean for Andhra's future? Let's now pivot to the incredible scale of the vision he is now pursuing under the umbrella of 2047, starting with his own state's blueprint.
Right, so we're transitioning now from political biography to developmental futurology. Naidu is currently engaged in 2 simultaneous, massive, long-term planning exercises.
The state-specific Swarna Andhra at 2047 and the alignment with the central government's Viksit Bharat 2047.
And these blueprints are designed to span the next 25 years, all the way up to the centenary of India's independence. It represents a quarter-century commitment of policy focus.
Let's start with 3.1, Swarna Andhra at 2047, the grand alchemy of the state. The source material calls this a civilizational blueprint, an audacious act of collective imagination.
It's seeking to transform the state by 2047, promising nothing less than a wealthy, healthy, and happy Andhra Pradesh. If Viksit Bharat is the national symphony, the sources identify Swarna Andhra as the coastal crescendo.
I think it's important to track 3.1.2. The evolution of an idea from 2020 to 2047 here. This isn't the first time he's done this.
No, his original vision 2020 from the 90s was focused on manufacturing IT employment. The goal then was 1 IT professional per family. It was about getting jobs.
And the Swarna Andhra goal has matured significantly. It reflects the economic journey the state and the country have taken.
The ambition now is one family, one entrepreneur.
That is a critical structural shift. Why move from employment to entrepreneurship? What's the thinking there?
It's a deliberate structural shift in economic philosophy. You're moving the focus from dependency on employment, where you're a wage earner subject to global market fluctuations, to enterprise, where you are a job creator and a wealth accumulator,
So it shifts the state's role from just providing training.
to actively fostering an ecosystem of startups, MSMEs, and risk-taking. It's moving from survival economics to prosperity architecture. It fundamentally changes the risk profile of the entire state economy.
And the democratic process used to craft this vision is almost as impressive as the vision itself. The sources emphasize 3.1.3, governance as conversation. Jan Bagidari.
This isn't a plan formulated by a few bureaucrats in a room.
Not at all. The entire blueprint was forged through massive distributed consultation. We're talking 1.8 million citizen consultations across villages, towns, diaspora forums, universities, and industry councils.
That scale of consultation is, frankly, unprecedented for a state-level plan in India, and it signals that he has taken the lessons of 2019 to heart.
It makes this democracy practiced not merely as an election every 5 years, but as continuous dialogue and co-creation.
It seeks to make the policy outcome truly representative of the collective aspiration, ensuring that the promised growth is not just fast, but fundamentally fair and compassionate. It integrates the voices of the agrarian communities that felt alienated before.
And this massive undertaking requires serious institutional commitment. 3.1.4. The institutional architecture is fascinating.
The task force is co-chaired by N. Chandrasekaran, the chairman of Tata Sons, with strategic support from the Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII.
That collaboration signals that the state is viewing this not just as a government plan, but as a critical national economic project. It requires the highest level of private sector collaboration and expertise in execution.
And the beating heart of the implementation structure is what they're calling the P4 model, public-private-people partnership. This is the key philosophical insight.
Reframing citizens not as passive beneficiaries of government schemes, but as active co-creators of development.
Yes.
Can we elaborate on the people component here? How is the citizen institutionally integrated beyond just being consulted?
The P4 model goes beyond simple consultation. It integrates citizens through micro-governance roles, through data feedback loops. The Metamitra app is a key example, and crucially, through mechanisms like community land stakes and escrow-based systems that ensure transparency and ownership.
So an infrastructure project, for example.
In an infrastructure project, the local community is brought in as a stakeholder, not just a recipient. This gives them an incentive to ensure project efficiency and long-term maintenance. It's democracy evolving from mere representation to active, sustained participation in governance. It gives citizens structural ownership of their 2047 destiny.
Okay, let's get to the numbers. 3.1.5. Staggering economic aspirations, coordinates on the map. We're talking about targets that are simply mind-boggling in their long-term ambition.
The gross state domestic product, or GSDP, target is rising from 14.22 lakh crore in 2023-24 to a monumental OCO 308 lakh crore.
Which is about $2.4 trillion by 2047. That is a 20-fold increase.
To achieve that level of transformation, the state must sustain a highly challenging 15% annual growth rate over 2 decades. This isn't just incremental progress. It requires continuous structural transformation, massive investment, and complete administrative efficiency.
Sustaining 15% growth for 20 years is, it's virtually unprecedented for a major economy. What does that require in terms of structural reform?
That is the ultimate test of the technocratic model. Historically, sustained double-digit growth is typically seen during, say, post-war reconstruction or during China's initial hyper-industrialization phase.
Right.
For a democratic state to achieve 15%, it means a complete overhaul of land and labor laws. It means 100% resolution of legal disputes within a defined, rapid time frame. It means attracting foreign direct investment that exceeds 5-7% of GSDP every single year.
Massive port-led industrialization.
And most crucially, leveraging technology AI, quantum not just for high-end industry, but to boost agricultural and MSME productivity by factors of 5 to 10. It is a declaration that Andhra Pradesh intends to leapfrog the competition and become India's leading economy per capita.
And that per capita income target reinforces the scale of this ambition. It's projected to rise from 2.66 lakh to 55 lakh, which is over $42,000.
By hitting that figure, they are aiming to decisively leapfrog from the current middle-income reality to high-of-the-world prosperity. They want to compete with established economies economies like South Korea or parts of Western Europe.
Our sources describe these numbers not as mere targets, but as coordinates on a map of transformation, a deliberate declaration.
That Andhra Pradesh intends to move from a regional player to a global economic superpower through sheer force of will, meticulous planning, and technological prowess. This level of ambition demands a detailed operational plan.
Which brings us to the core philosophical framework, 3.1.6, the Padi Sutralu, the 10 pillars of the future.
The sources describe these as the 10 commandments of a sustainable civilization. They fuse economics with ethics and establish the moral and functional coordinates for development.
We need to dedicate some serious time to dissecting each of these as they lay out the functional blueprint for the next 25 years.
Let's do it. Let's start with the foundational one, placed deliberately at the beginning. 1. Zero poverty.
This is an explicit ethical commitment at the very foundation of the economic plan.
Specifically aiming to uplift 2.2 million people out of deprivation. This ensures that the massive growth targets are inherently inclusive and socially responsible. It's applying the learning from the 2019 defeat, where growth without inclusion led to political backlash.
And this isn't just about welfare distribution, is it? It must be structural.
Absolutely. Zero poverty here means engineering sustainable pathways out of deprivation through universal access to education, skilling, and capital, moving families from the informal economy to formal enterprise, which connects directly to the second pillar.
Pillar number 2, skilling, employment, and MSME growth. The practical target here is the creation of a staggering 20 million new jobs.
Through a network of 175 industrial parks, coastal economic corridors, manufacturing zones, and sectoral clusters, the focus is on fostering the MSME sector, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as the primary engine for employment.
And crucially, the plan integrates farmers into the industrial chain.
By making them equity stakeholders in manufacturing. This directly links the red soil to industry. This is where the P4 model gets activated. A farmer whose land is near an industrial park or who provides high-tech inputs to a processing unit gains a financial stake in the success of that industry.
It fundamentally de-risks the agrarian community while integrating them into the formal economy.
Pillar 3, then, is water sovereignty. This is so critical, and we have to pause here to give it regional context. Why is this a major pillar?
Because the history of farm distress, drought, and irrigation neglect was a core contributor to the 2019 defeat.
Exactly. Achieving water sovereignty through efficient systems is a direct, structural, and necessary response to past political failure.
So what does water sovereignty practically entail in a dry region like that?
It means comprehensive, climate-resilient management. It involves completing stalled large-scale irrigation projects, but also, and this is the modern twist, utilizing IoT sensors, AI-driven weather modeling, micro-irrigation systems, and promoting drought-resistant cropping patterns.
Maximizing crop per drop.
Precisely. Moving away from water-intensive traditional crops to high-value, export-oriented horticulture. Ensuring that agricultural output is delinked from unpredictable rainfall cycles.
Which leads right into the next one, agri-tech empowerment. Pillar 4.
Yes. This is where technology fundamentally modernizes the farm. This isn't just about giving farmers tractors. It involves AI-led agriculture, drone-based crop monitoring for pest and soil analysis, IoT irrigation networks, and supporting natural farming collectives for chemical-free produce.
The farmer is explicitly reimagined as a precision scientist and an entrepreneur in a high-value export chain.
Moving agriculture from subsistence to advanced science. The sources emphasize creating agri-tech zones focused on export processing and cold storage, turning the state's produce into a global brand.
Pillar 5, global logistics leadership.
This focuses on leveraging the state's extensive coastline, which is one of the longest in India, through port-led industrialization.
The strategy is to position the state as a major global logistics hub, turning the coastline into a launch pad for international trade and economic activity.
Which is a key step in hitting that $2.4 trillion target. This requires massive investments in deep-sea ports, dedicated freight corridors, and associated industrial clusters. It's about making the state the preferred gateway for goods moving between South Asia and the rest of the world.
Next up, Pillar 6, energy efficiency and climate responsibility. This is incredibly forward-looking and ambitious.
It shows a clear alignment with global climate goals. The target is a massive 500 GW renewable energy target for the state.
500 gigawatts, that's a huge number.
It is. And it's alongside dedicated ambitions for green hydrogen hubs and comprehensive net zero strategies. This places sustainability at the core of economic strategy, not as an afterthought.
Achieving 500 gigaview means creating an entire green energy ecosystem.
Manufacturing solar panels, battery storage, and becoming a net exporter of clean energy. It positions Andhra Pradesh as a critical state in India's national energy security framework.
We can't forget the new social contract, the 2029 promises. This is a near-term component built into this 2047 framework. This is the tangible political commitment.
Right.
It promises that by 2029, just 5 years after his return, and well within the next electoral cycle, every single household will have 247 electricity, clean drinking water, sanitation, LPG, universal internet access, housing, and solar rooftops.
This commitment to universal access to modern amenities signals that this economic vision is fundamentally different from the 90s model. If the 20th century promise was about ensuring mere survival, this social contract imagines the 21st century as defined by universal flourishing.
It's about access to the basic tools of modernity.
And the commitment to 100% literacy, life expectancy reaching 85 years, and female workforce participation reaching 80% reinforces that smart and just state goal by building social infrastructure alongside the economic.
So the sheer scale of this state ambition, it naturally has to align with the massive national vision, which is 3.2, Viksit Bharat 2047, the National Symphony.
Swarna Andhra is the regional contribution to this national epic, but the national vision provides the strategic context. This is the wider canvas against which Swarna Andhra must be judged.
And Viksit Bharat is described not merely as a policy, but as a national meditation on destiny.
Conceived under PM Modi, it imagines India reclaiming its historical role as a moral, technological, and economic axis of the world. It's about leveraging the unique confluence of demographic dividend, digital public infrastructure, and democratic stability.
The core goal is that historic transition from Swatantra Bharat, which is independent India, to Samriddha Bharat, prosperous India.
It is about fusing the concept of self-reliance, Atmanirbhar Bharat, with strategic global engagement, ensuring sovereignty and interdependence can coexist in a complex geopolitical landscape.
The time frame is rooted in the powerful conceptual framework of the Amrit Kal, the 25-year nectar period from 2022 to 2047.
And the ethos of the national vision is simple yet profoundly ambitious. Bold vision, brighter future. This is the civilizational compass, ensuring that technological ascendancy coexists with cultural rootedness and civilizational confidence.
Let's talk about 3.2.3. The economic horizon, the national coordinates. Yeah. We're talking about truly audacious targets for the national economy. India's GDP projected to reach between $30 and $40 trillion by 2047.
And that structural transformation will see the per capita income soaring from roughly $2,600 now to a staggering $15,000 to $18,000.
That level of economic density requires a sustained annual growth target of 7–10% over 2 decades.
Which is essential for India to rise decisively into the League of High-Income Nations, while meticulously preserving its democratic structure and internal social stability. This transformation implies a shift from a low- to middle-income nation to an indispensable global economic partner.
But the sources stress, just as with Swarna Andhra, that this transformation is not solely numerical. 3.2.4. Social justice as national infrastructure is central to the Viksit Bharat definition of success.
The vision explicitly states that equity must not be sacrificed at the altar of efficiency. It's drawing lessons from global examples where rapid growth has created internal social fragmentation.
The social outcomes are treated as foundational infrastructure, necessary for structural stability.
Absolutely. Targets include achieving 100% literacy, ensuring the entire population can participate in the knowledge economy, extending life expectancy to over 80 years, reflecting world-class health infrastructure,
reducing the poverty rate below 5%, essentially eradicating absolute poverty,
and pushing female workforce participation above 70%. The idea of prosperity here is the capacity of every citizen to imagine, access, and shape opportunity. It moves far beyond simple wealth metrics.
The entire national project is built around 3.2.5. The 4 foundational pillars, demographic focus, which identify the core demographics whose empowerment will drive this progress.
Recognizing that India's growth is fundamentally a people-driven project. First, Yuva, youth, the creative engine and the massive demographic dividend. Their skill development, innovation capacity, and integration into the global workforce are central to the 25-year plan.
Second, Garib, the poor, described explicitly as the moral measure of progress.
The targeted structural upliftment of this segment through schemes focused on housing, health insurance, and direct benefit transfers is the benchmark for the ethical success of the entire project. This ensures the benefits of the $40 trillion economy are felt by those at the bottom of the pyramid.
Third, Mahilan, women. designated as essential economic and social catalysts.
The ambitious target of 70% plus female workforce participation is a crucial structural change required to achieve the GDP target. It recognizes that half the population must be fully integrated into the productive economy.
And fourth, Annadata, farmers, the guardians of food sovereignty.
Ensuring that the foundational agricultural sector is modernized, secure, and prosperous. This pillar ensures they are protected from market volatility while integrating them into the technological future through schemes like advanced agri-tech and direct linkages to processing industries.
And finally, there's 3.2.6, governance as a living system.
The national vision emphasizes collaborative, multi-scalar implementation. Niti Aayog oversees strategy, citizens participate via the MyGov platform, and the commitment to streamlining the state is clear. Over 41,000 compliances have been scrapped across central and state levels to reduce bureaucratic friction.
Which architects a transparent state, reflecting the efficiency-focused Naidu championed decades ago.
Exactly.
The beauty of this deep dive is seeing how these two visions, the state and the national, harmonize and reinforce each other. 3.3, convergence. Andhra and India's shared future is where Naidu's specific obsessions meet the national framework.
It positions the state as a laboratory for the most advanced parts of the national plan.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, Naidu's current cutting-edge obsessions, quantum, AI, space, green energy, drone cities, they align perfectly with the national Viksit Bharat themes of innovation, science, technology, and sustainability, don't they?
Perfectly. Andhra is essentially aiming to be the prototype state for the highest tech, most complex aspects of the national vision. It's embracing sectors that redefine development and going beyond traditional manufacturing.
Our sources detail his current specific technological obsessions. He has moved strategically beyond just traditional IT to these next-generation fields. Quantum valleys focused on computation and security.
Drone cities focused on logistics and surveillance.
Space innovation zones for private sector aerospace, and AI education grids for rapid workforce upskilling.
This shows an acceleration of his original technocratic focus, now applied to cutting-edge 21st century technologies where India seeks global leadership.
And we see this through specific recent investment examples that turn the concept of governance as algorithm from a metaphor into a concrete reality.
The state has already established a massive $500 billion investment pipeline. This includes major high-profile projects like Google's AI data center campus and Reliance's solar-powered AI facilities.
These are strategic national assets being sited in Andhra Pradesh. It demonstrates confidence in Naidu's ability to deliver high-tech infrastructure quickly.
And for the common citizen, the Mana Mitra app, which delivers 751 services directly to your mobile phone, and the use of escrow-based transparency frameworks in government contracts, it shows that governance is designed to be responsive, reflective, and evolving.
A living, accessible system where citizen satisfaction becomes the ultimate key performance indicator.
It's an attempt to bridge that critical gap between the technocrats' view and the citizens' experience that caused the 2019 collapse.
The synergy is profound. Both the Swarna Andhra and Viksit Bharat visions focus on redefining development not just as numerical increases in wealth, but as a deep structural, technological, and ethical transformation.
The ultimate shared goal is a new continuity, where the farmer becomes a technologist, the village becomes a startup, and prosperity becomes a shared inheritance across all demographics and generations.
This has been an incredible high-velocity journey through the life and ambition of Chandrababu Naidu. We've gone from the dramatic political revolt against NTR to the dazzling height of Cyberabad, the humbling, necessary fall of 2019, and the spectacular 2024 resurrection based on a matured vision of technology infused with inclusion and social justice.
He is undeniably one of the most intellectually disruptive forces in Indian politics. His career is living proof that politics, when infused with imagination and disciplined, systemic execution, can genuinely attempt to rewrite geography and accelerate destiny in profound ways.
Provided the political costs of that acceleration are carefully managed.
Precisely. His legacy is defined by a profound paradox. Naidu is simultaneously visionary and vulnerable, globalist and grassroots, engineer and emperor, innovator and institutionalist. He embodies the central tension of rapid modernization within a complex, diverse democracy.
The sources note that by 2047, Andhra seeks not merely to exist in the developed world, but to define it through its P4 model and deep tech integration. This raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over as you process these enormous ambitions.
As governance becomes increasingly treated as an algorithm responsive, reflective, and evolving, what happens to the essential, unpredictable, and sometimes inefficient human element of democracy that proves so critical in 2019? Can the technocrat king truly maintain harmony between servers and soil for the next 2 decades, ensuring that the relentless pursuit of metrics doesn't once again outpace the pulse and social needs of the electorate?